Hi everyone, thanks so much for joining us for episode number 8, Conversation with Angie and Mike. Today we are interviewing and talking to Will Human, who is a financial planner. He talks about lots of different bits and pieces to do with finances, investments, and of course his experiences with mental health. But we dive in and start talking about people being hard of hearing. Hope you enjoy.
If it's the other way around. But I think people's hearing does deteriorate, but as a part of a community, it's almost as frowned upon as much as mental health is frowned upon, that people don't want to admit that they've got a hearing problem.
That's why I wear a bright blue hearing aid. So it's obvious. Yeah. It's like wearing glasses. Yeah. I can't see so well, but you don't comment on me not being able to see wearing glasses. But you think I'm stupid because I wear a hearing aid.
No.
Because deaf people are stupid for some reason.
That's why. Yeah,
that's why I decided on a bright blue, not one to hide.
But you're very flamboyant like that, aren't you?
Yes.
And I love that about you. And I said, but we haven't introduced. Obviously, this is Will Human, who I have known for
30 years.
About that.
Oh, wow, very long time.
Yeah, it is a long time. I mean, lots of different things, really, isn't it? We've been friends as such for 30 years, and then we've just kind of developed our relationship in lots of other ways.
Yeah.
Which has been lovely.
Yeah.
Lovely. And you've been part of the charity when we first launched the charity. Mm-hmm. You supported the charity a lot, attending meetings and trustees and all of that. And then obviously work and other commitments for you came out of the way. But
I thought
still support us in an indirect way.
A really important service that you were providing for people to be able to tap into getting counselling, which is not readily available for even the smallest of things, and had personal experience of that through my family. So when you set the charity up, it sounded like a cracking idea, and so of course I was going to support it.
And we appreciate that support because actually you're an integral part of the local community in lots of different ways. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes people don't necessarily identify the value of having a charity like ourselves and other charities that are out there that provide a service that actually statutory services can no longer provide. They just don't have the capacity or the money to do it. Mm-hmm. And so therefore they need people like us to be able to provide those services. In fact, I had a conversation this morning with somebody about just about a referral and saying to them, we do see sometimes up to 135 people a week in the charity, plus the footy team, plus any conversations that we have with schools, any talks that we do for local organisations, which we're happy to do for anybody really, about mental health. But this woman at the end of the phone, who's from a statutory service, went, really? Mm-hmm. She was really shocked. She didn't actually realise that we did as much as we do.
I think many people are like that. I spoke to somebody just the other day who's they're in Weston. They have absolutely no idea how to access any kind of mental health service. And I was telling them about the charity, and they were absolutely gobsmacked at it. They thought it was incredible. Mm. And when I started talking to them about timescales to actually see a statutory service, they just couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. I mean, the statutory services, they're so stretched. It's like 100. You might be waiting over 100 days, over 200 days, 300 days. Some people are waiting 500-600 days to be seen. And when you're in crisis, or it feels like you're in crisis at that moment in time, you need somebody almost instantaneously. You don't need to wait. And sadly, we've had a waiting list that we've had to keep people on hold because just logistics. We haven't been able to. Like one of our counsellors had been on holiday, another counsellor's been on holiday. Just that happens, isn't it? There's nothing you can do about it. But and we have done something about it. We've just taken on another 4 counsellors so that we can kind of have our capacity full, so we can get rid of the waiting list and reopen the books. But some people that are out there waiting for statutory services, we know have been waiting 18 months and more, minimum.
Mm-hmm. I think it's also good that it's a localised service. You could almost do with your charity in every town in the country, so that the area, the people, you understand the background to a lot of people's stories, and I think they feel more comfortable with people that live and work in the area that they're living and working in.
I think the model works really well, but I mean, as trustees, like, we do everything for free. We don't do anything. I mean, one of our trustees does some admin work purely because the lady that was doing our admin work wanted to do more counselling work. She's a qualified counsellor. And it just seemed to keep the numbers down. That was the right thing to do. And I could no longer do the amount of admin work that I was doing. It was just getting too much for me. Mm-hmm. So we decided, one of the trustees we pay him for a couple of hours a week. 3 hours, 3 hours a week. I can't remember, something like
just
that.
To keep on top of
just to keep on top of all the admin that the charity has. But other than that, none of us take a penny, and we wouldn't. But I think having that same attitude in other parts of the country, would that be the same? Because some people can't give that time. I mean, I'm lucky. I have my own company. Mike has his own company. Rob is an employee. Mandy's an employee. We've just taken on another trustee, Mark. I don't know if you know Mark. Mark, who is he's just about to retire, so he's got a bit more time in his hands. But it's having people that are able to give that time free of charge.
Yes.
And also the counsellors, they work at a reduced rate. So, they get £20 an hour at this moment in time for their services. If they're doing couples work, they get more. But that's not a lot considering how much qualifications. I mean, it takes 7 years to become a counsellor if you do it properly. It's a lot of studying.
That is a lot, isn't it? Yeah.
And people don't realize. Plus, on top of that, you do an awful lot of voluntary work to get your hours in. So, unless you've got your statutory hours, you then are a qualified counsellor. It's a minimum of 100 to 150, depending on which course you're doing. And so, people like me don't employ people from 100 or 150 hours necessarily. I want them to have more experience. So it is that bit about recognising that the service that we provide is a really valuable service, but what's behind it is a lot of valuable people that work blooming hard to kind of keep it going. But coming back to the hearing, that's also about hearing, though, isn't it? Because if you want a hearing test, how long does it take to get a hearing test nowadays?
I have absolutely no idea.
Absolutely crazy. I mean,
I know a couple of years ago when I was having some problems with my ears.
Yeah, you had problems too, didn't you?
I did, yeah, and it was horrific actually, the waiting time, and that was before COVID. That was got to be 4 years ago now, I think 4 or 5 years ago, and it was to go and have a test. I think it was about 6 months wait, and then following the test, they escalated to something else, and there was a big long wait for that one, and it sort of every step of the sort of the escalation, if you like, there was a big wait. But what was the worst time, or the worst thing that happened was that I didn't get a letter for an appointment. I sort of thought, well, it's been 6 months. It's kind of been the timescale they said. Still haven't had a letter. So I phoned them, and they said, "Oh yeah, we posted you a letter. You didn't turn up to your appointment. You have to go back to your doctor now to be re-referred." And you just think, well, the letter didn't arrive. I never got the letter. And you think, people will struggle with that, especially if they move house, or they're not in permanent accommodation and they're trying to get access to the NHS services. It can be really, really difficult.
I suppose that's another side. That's an interesting side to say, because you ended up going private, and I know you did. Did you end up going private?
No, not at all. I found it relatively straightforward in that my wife said, "You need to get your hearing tested several times over several years." So eventually I succumbed, booked an appointment at my doctor.
Yeah.
And I had a test there with the nurse that was doing that kind of thing. And then she said, "Yeah, you're definitely a little bit deficient." So we referred to Taunton.
Yeah.
Went down there to the soundproof room and had a much longer test, much more in-depth test, where they worked out what was wrong with the ears and the hearing, and then ordered the unit to come through, which was delivered locally in Burnham.
Oh, right, because you can go to like these places where they do your opticians thing, and they will do a test, and then you can go through that same system.
Thing is, the NHS is all free.
Yeah.
And the hearing aid is free.
Yeah.
And
that's really good.
For me, it worked perfectly well. And I found the sort of backup behind it fine. I haven't had them retested since, but that's at my request.
Yeah, but if it works, why then tamper with it? But I know somebody that is really, cannot hear hardly anything. Wouldn't probably be able to keep up with our conversation now. And he's been waiting 6 months for his appointment. he's had an appointment to say, yes, you definitely need to see somebody. But he's been waiting 6 months for that appointment to come through. And then he was told he'd have to wait at least another 3 to 4 months before the hearing aids would come.
Wow.
It's a long time.
That's why people do go to places like Spec and get it done there.
But you can do that on the NHS and not pay for it.
Yeah.
But the trouble with one of our local places is that you can actually hear the road noise when they do it.
Right.
When they do that.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So there's actually the value in having it. It's pretty slim, really, because you know, if you can, you're actually hearing the road that just says something, doesn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
It's not a soundproof room in that sense, and so there's no point having it done.
No,
that's very true.
I'm very lucky because I've got perfect hearing.
You think?
No, I have. I've had a test. I had my test. Shut up. I had a test done a few years ago, and they put me in this amazing setup in Bristol. I was having some issues with my balance. Remember when I had that really awful time with my balance? And so they wanted to just double check my hearing to see if it was affected by it. And it wasn't. And the woman there said, "How old are you again?" She just checked my record. She said, "I can't believe it. She said, you've got perfect hearing." And I went, I kind of worked that one out. I don't really miss any
Which is really good.
Yeah, I know, amazing, really. I think it's, but saying that links to Will as well, because Will, who does music, I was listening to a podcast the other day, and one of the chaps on there, who's actually from Bristol, he was saying he didn't wear earplugs when he went to loud and always had his music up loud on, like his earpods and stuff like that. And he's got really serious tinnitus.
Oh, no.
And it's like, and it really has interfered with him, not just his hearing, but also his mental health.
Wow.
And how that's, that interference, that constant interference, and what that does to him has been phenomenal, really. It was a really good podcast to listen to, because I learned so much about the impact that had on him. And in fact, he stopped his career for a period of time because he had to learn to manage his mental health around the tinnitus.
Wow.
Very few people would connect the two together.
Oh, I think my hearing deteriorated quickly after going to a lot of gigs, and actually over the last couple of years I've put in earplugs that reduce right down the level, particularly the bass, and you can actually hear more. But I don't come out then with Dalek talk, when you can't. It was horrible, but that's helped a lot. But I think that damaged my top end hearing quite a lot.
Well, I never go anywhere without a set of earplugs for that reason, because I cannot stand. I just can't stand the noise. I don't like that feeling, that aftereffect. So any concert, or when I've watched Will play, any gig like that, I've always put earplugs in. And Will's he's worn earplugs from when he was a child. We got them made for him, and he's had them made consequently since, for that reason. And his hearing does all right. There's going to be a lot of damage there for anybody listening to live music all the time.
Yeah.
So have you fully recovered with your hearing now?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, so I've got to have another checkup. I think next year. I think you have a checkup after next year. I think you have a checkup every 5 years. Okay. But yeah, touch wood, it's all good. And my hearing, the scale that I can hear at is still less than normal, but it's better after the operation that I had, which is very rare. Normally, when people have the operation that I have, they lose their hearing, a significant proportion, but actually mine went up, which is really good. I was very fortunate, really.
Yeah.
I was also surprised I had a brain scan at the same time.
Did you? Did they find anything?
No.
Sorry.
You beat me to the joke.
Why did they do that?
In case there was anything wrong with my brain, I guess. But
right.
they wanted to do a scan as well as hearing test. It was after the hearing test. They said, you need to go for a scan. Wow.
But I suppose if it's only on one side, I'm not a doctor, so I have no idea. But if it's only on one side, that
there was no explanation for it. There was nothing wrong, so luckily.
Well, they found one anyway. I hate scans. I hate anything like that. I get really anxious. I actually have to have somebody in there to look after me. I'm not anxious.
Really?
Yeah, it's awful. I wish I wasn't like that, but I am.
Yeah, that's
not really bad claustrophobia.
I don't like confined spaces, and I don't like crowds. I particularly don't like crowds. But I didn't find it a problem. I just sort of closed my eyes and listened to music. The only thing I was worried about was moving. It says, don't move. And I was thinking, if I move, I'm going to spoil it all or something.
I always have, whenever I have something like that, I always worry that I'm going to sneeze.
Yeah.
So as a result, you then end up sneezing and they have to restart it. And it's very frustrating.
I had one done once and they said, we can't use this. I said, why? They said, you were moving too much. I said, I was solid. They went, you were shaking the whole way through. No, I'm really sorry. And then I had to go and have another one done. Oh, no. It's like, yeah, it's awful. I am pretty crap at stuff.
That's not good. So going back to mental health then, tell us a bit more about what you do, and perhaps we can link that into some mental health stuff.
For the past 25 years or more, I have been helping people with their finances. Entitled financial advisor, but these days prefer to call myself a lifestyle financial planner. And I try and help people to plan their lifestyles around their finances and make sure that they can live the life they want to live. But that does also include helping people understand their finances. And it's very interesting you talk about the link to mental health, because there's been a lot of recent research and surveys about the link between concerns about your financial situation and mental well-being.
Yeah, of course.
Now, money doesn't buy you happiness, as the old saying, and I think that's true. But I think if you are anxious about your money situation, then that's not going to help, and it feeds into mental health issues. So the basic thing I would always suggest to people is, don't be afraid of it. Don't walk away from your financial situation. Understand it. Get to grips with understanding the very basics of what money comes in, what money goes out. Because if you understand it, it becomes less frightening. And also, sometimes you can do something about it. So I encourage people to understand their income and expenditures. And it doesn't matter how much you earn or don't earn, how much wealth you do or don't have. It's all relative. So even on lower budgets, making sure that you know what's going out and what's coming in is very useful. People don't always do that. And I think it's because they're frightened of doing it.
I think you're very spot on there, and I think I've been guilty of it, where you sort of, you might go out for a weekend and you go and see some friends and you easily spend whatever. It might be 50 quid, it might be £500, and then you get
some weekend away.
Yeah, it is.
I don't know these days. So expensive. But you come back on a Sunday night or a Monday and you think, wow, that weekend cost me a lot of money. And yeah, I think a lot of people do sometimes bury their head in the sand, and it's only when you then start looking at it. I mean, I look at my bank account probably every single day. I check what's gone in, what's gone out, check for any surprises, and it kind of helps plan the next few days, the next week, and do it every day. And I know a lot of people that do that. A lot of my friends do that because it's just a way of keeping tabs on things. But I know my parents, for example, they don't do that. They still have the paper statement that comes through the post, and that's the only time they know what's gone in and out for the last 4 or 5 weeks since their last statement. And I could not cope with that. And I don't know how people did cope with that before internet banking.
I think the one thing, if you go back to old-fashioned ways, I always remember my grandma, who was she was born about 1890, really about 1890, and she died in about 1980 something. But she always had pots on the mantelpiece for each bill that came in.
Right.
So she'd put, when Grandad brought his wages in, she'd put £1 in there and 50p in there, whatever the currency was then, because it was old-fashioned stuff, or crown or whatever. And she'd have a number of pots. And that was her way of budgeting, which worked, because she then said, right, I've now got £2.50 left over. Grandad, there's your 50p for your tobacco for the week, and I've got the other £2. We'll put that to one side for a rainy day.
Yeah.
And it is as simple as that. If you know what your regular expenditure is and you can cover that, then you look at whether or not you can perhaps build up a little bit of a reserve savings just for a rainy day. That's the starting point for having a better understanding and being much happier with your money.
But doesn't that, I know that I hear what you're saying, it's absolute complete if somebody's taught you to do that. If you've never been taught to do that, it's then very difficult to do that. I know for me, is that, like my background, as you both know, wasn't the nicest of backgrounds, and I wasn't taught to do anything. I had no parental support at all in regards to finances. There was nobody there to say, do what Granny did. There was none of that at all. I mean, I went to my grandparents a couple of occasions, and they had that there. So I'm an intelligent woman, so I had the intelligence to work it out. Unfortunately, I mean, like you were saying, internet banking's been brilliant, but there's so many people that are afraid of the internet.
They are, yeah.
I mean, my father-in-law he's coming up 90. He hasn't got a clue. They've just decided to close the local bank. We've just transferred everything over to the local bank so we'd have access to it. And now they've decided to close it. He's no longer driving as such in a distance, so he's choosing not to do that. He's completely buggered. Yeah. So, I have to do his internet banking if I want to do that internet banking. Truthfully, I don't really want to do it. I don't want to get involved. But I'll do it because in fact, I'm not doing it. Dave's helping him. But like you, I check my account. I check Dave's account because he got done. Somebody was fraudulently taking money out of his account. He didn't even notice.
Wow.
And we're not talking about a couple of quid. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds of pounds. And basically it was like, okay, Dave, you need to keep an eye on this. And so we changed it over. So I've got the internet banking for both of our accounts. And I also do the works one as well every single day. I check every day. But I mean, people won't approach, say, somebody like yourself in regards to financial support, because you're not necessarily the right person for them to go to, are you? You can help people if they're looking at financial planning and savings and things like that. But somebody like who might just need financial support can go through. There's loads of agencies out there that will help you, and we refer people through the charity to those financial. We also use it in the rehab. We have them come into the rehab, and they do it in the rehab as well. They do it as group work, and they look at financial planning and stuff like that. Because most of our clients haven't got a clue. Yeah. In the rehab, certainly have not got a clue.
Going back to the education piece, how do people learn how to apply for a mortgage or save money or manage money? How do people know what a credit card actually is? Everyone gets really excited about a credit card, but what is it? And I think, you go back and look at, schools and they do none of that.
Oh, they've started to do it, haven't they?
Yes, and financial institutions such as the people I work with volunteer to do that. And I've put myself on a list of volunteers that will go into a school and talk to children of various ages about various stages of finance, but more to do with just the nitty gritty of what is a bank account, and how does that work? How does a mortgage work? How does everything else work?
But that, once again, though, that comes back to whether or not the school take you up on the offer. It's exactly the same as the charity. We say we'll come in and do talks to your kids about mental health. We'll talk to them about addiction. We'll talk about lots of different things. We've got all of that in hand. They don't take us up on the offer. Right. We actually have to force ourselves onto people. And it's almost like, why are we doing this? Like, why are they not taking up this offer of help?
Exactly. And that's what I mean by the education piece, is that it's not mandatory. It's not a requirement that our young people learn this stuff. And I think that's so, so important. Because you see time and time again, I was involved with a project with Citizens Advice, probably 15 years ago now, and it was all about managing your money and debt, and the focus was around young people that had gone to university, and they were at university and they had all this university debt. They had their student loans, they had their students' loans, they'd blown their student loans, and they turn to things like credit cards because the banks, you're at that age where a bank will give you a credit card. And, do they really know what a credit card actually is or how it works? That you can't just spend the money and not pay it back. You can spend it and then pay it back over a period of time. It's going to cost you a lot more money. Yeah. And it was a really good education piece. And it's probably one of the best things that I've seen. I haven't seen much since then. I do see some TV adverts. I think Barclays are a good bank that seems to be doing
they've started to do that, haven't they?
Yeah, they seem to be doing their financial education stuff, which is really good. But again, going back to the school, why is it not taught in schools? It's such a useful thing to know.
I think they have put it on to is it personal development, what they call it? PSR or something? PSH or something like that. Yeah. They have put it on there now, but I don't think it necessarily always. And also the other thing is you do it at school and then you go home and whoever's at home is telling you something completely different or something random that isn't fitting in. It's breaking the mold, isn't it? It's breaking that kind of. My kids were lucky because Dave and I were pretty astute around finances, and we still are in that sense. But I mean, we've talked about this, about long term. I'm aware that I'm at the latter part of my life rather than the early part of my life, and I need to start planning for what I'm going to do when I'm old and don't work, and don't have an income coming in. And where does that, And I'm obviously I spend quite a lot of time talking about this because it's something I think is really important. But so many people think, oh, don't worry, I've got a pension from the state. Do you know that you only get 150 quid or 200 quid a week?
Yeah, it's not a lot of money.
That is not a lot to pay any bills that you've got, particularly at the moment when we're looking at.
The minute they're forecasting that the average gas and electric bill for the average size house is going to be £355 a month. And you think if your pension's, I think it's 180 something.
Yes,
a week. Total. Then you're talking about almost your entire pension for 2 weeks going to your gas and electric bill. What about your council tax? All the other things that you buy, your food, etc.
Christmas presents for your grandchildren.
Exactly, that's it. And people don't think about it.
No.
Yeah, and people have got hung up on the term pension, and that, I think there's a lot of problems from media lack of support with that when there were pension scandals back in the 70s and 80s.
I completely concur.
But all that is a form of cunning plan to save for a day when you don't want to work anymore. That's all it is. And if you've got a different cunning plan, that's absolutely fine. But have a cunning plan, because you can never start too early to start putting that money aside.
My daughter argued like hell with me about, I said, get a pension, just sort it out and get a pension. I'm too young to have a pension. No, you're not. And now she's got a partner. Her husband is like very much that way inclined.
Yes.
And and now she says, I'm glad you made me do what I did. And I think I do it with everybody that I meet. Have you got a pension? I think I did it with you, didn't I?
The first thing you asked me.
Yeah, that's right, because it's just an investment in yourself, particularly if you've got your own company. It's a way of getting 25% back from the government. I might be wrong there, so please, I apologise if I am. But you can get the tax relief through that. And people just don't know that. They set up their own company, they've got this excess money, they're paying tax on it each year, instead of putting it in their pension, which is actually better for them than it is for them to...
Well, the simple way of putting it is it's a legitimate way for you to hang on to your money and not give it to the tax man.
Completely. I'm not saying you shouldn't pay tax. I think we should all pay tax. It's important.
No, it's a legitimate thing because they want you to save.
They want you to save. They're saying to you, we will reward you by doing that.
Yeah. And of course, that's because the state cannot afford it.
No, they can't.
We can't. We keep pushing the pension age up. And
I was going to say, don't forget that you have to wait till you're 68. Going on 69 now before you'll get the state pension.
Exactly, and I think that's the massive concern for young people, that you're asking a 18, 19, 20-year-old to invest in a pension that they're not going to see for such a long period of time. 40 plus years. And they just want to go and spend it on a night out or a car or a holiday or whatever. And it's very hard to persuade them.
That's where you come back to your budget again, though, isn't it? Because if you know that at the end of the month, theoretically, you've got £10 left over, that's the time to put the £10 into a separate pot and forget all about it.
Yeah.
And if you understand that, it's good. But if you haven't got a clue, then you'll go out on a night out. And it's like you take out £5 for parking and the rest of it's gone in a coffee.
Yes. Oh, it is.
That's the way it works.
Yeah. Definitely.
You tend to spend what you've got.
Oh, you all? Yeah. Every time, most people do. I mean, I don't drink, so I never get swayed by that. So in that sense, I know exactly what's coming in and going out, much to my husband's disgrace, because I remember everything and everybody else that's around me. But it does work. I mean, it's it's that awareness. But coming back to credit, I was talking to one of our trustees a long time ago, talking about credit. Didn't have a clue that they were paying 26.8% interest. Wow. And she went, what? You serious? Yes, seriously. didn't have a clue because nobody had ever taught them. It's like having a catalogue and they say, you've got £3,000 you can spend. No, you haven't. That's £3,000 credit. And they're going to charge you 29 point whatever % interest on that. So you're not only spending 3,000, I can't work the maths out that quickly, but you're then going to spend another £300 on top of it in interest. No, I didn't realise it meant that. Yeah, it does. Because she's never been taught. Nobody's ever taught that person that. And there's probably thousands and thousands and thousands.
Tens of thousands, I reckon.
Got to be. And it comes back, like you were saying about pensions as well. People automatically, you said about the pension scandals when people were actually stealing from people's pension pots and diverting it into things that they wanted to do and not actually, fundamentally, there wasn't any money. And I know lots of people that have experienced that. And I've also known lots of people that have experienced poor financial advisors that have stolen their money. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And that's that thing about trust and finding trusting people that you know that are also supported by trusted organisations. Because if you don't, you are taking a big risk and it's never bloody well worth it. And there are really no, when something says it's absolutely the best deal in the world, it isn't.
Yeah, walk away from those.
Yeah, they're not. And the chances are you won't have any money at the end of it.
No.
So it's a tough one. One of the things you said at the beginning was we were talking about, family having had challenges and having support and stuff like that. How have you felt as somebody who's had a family member that's needed the support? How's that felt for you? Because that's something else that you very rarely get that chance to talk to somebody that said, yeah, I've had a family member that's needed the support that the charity offers. Has that been something that's been reassuring for you? I'm going straight off the subject here, but I just thought we needed to come back to that.
Okay.
So we kind of whipped over that and didn't.
There's a couple of examples of that is people I've known who have needed some support, but maybe didn't realise they did a little bit.
Yeah.
Particularly through things like bereavement. But in my own family, someone needed someone else to talk to that wasn't so close to them.
Yeah.
And professionally, if you like, could then get to the bottom of what the issues were and help them to start sorting their own kind of lives out. And that's been really helpful because as someone who's not trained in mental health at all, I'm aware you can actually create more problems than you solve by trying to help someone, and you might be doing exactly the wrong thing. So I think the term reassuring comes in that the counsellors can say the right things at the right time to get the right information out, to get right to the root of the problem.
Yeah. And I loved your description of sorting out, because one of the things, and I've got real strong, and I work like that, I'm a counsellor, and I work very much about let's open this up and have it on the table so we can see what, I mean, I do mentoring and I do support for people as well, and that's the thing straight away, let's look at the whole picture instead of, and then they can sort it where it needs to go, rather than, because sometimes it can just feel like a ball of wool that's just messy, that has got tangled up with lots of other different things, and you need to be able to unravel that and section it off and say, right, I can do something about that. I can't do anything about that. It's out of my hands. I can do something about that. I've got an emotional attachment to that. Wow, that's from years and years ago, and I haven't even dealt with that. Why haven't I dealt with that? And then, right, okay, so then you can prioritise. It's a little bit like granny and a top of money. You put your money in, but you then start realising where you have to put your emotional energy and use the support that you've got, like with the external support, somebody that doesn't know you really, that doesn't really have any connection with you in that sense, is going to keep your confidentiality, so it's private.
Yeah.
To be able to say, right, we've unravelled the wall, now where do we go? I love drawing pictures. I spend my life drawing pictures on like these little fancy, I'm not good at drawing, by the way, I can't draw anything, but I love writing it all down and looking at the bigger picture, because very often you don't get that opportunity, and that's what counselling does. So I love that kind of analogy that you use.
Although I quite often feel like a social worker when I'm actually out working.
Sure.
I have to listen to people's woes. the trials and tribulations.
And dreams and desires, I imagine, as well. And dreams and desires as well, I imagine.
Yeah, that's the hope. Yes, yeah. Help them live the dream.
Yeah.
But the number of times I've sat there thinking, I'm not a social worker, but this is turning into one of those situations where I wish I was.
Isn't that the thing about when you work with the community, which we all do in an indirect way?
Yeah.
Mine perhaps more direct than anybody else, is that bit when you do meet somebody and you think, oh, I'm out of my depth here. This isn't really what I do. It sounds like this person needs a bit of help. Do you have the courage to say to somebody, have you ever thought of speaking to a counsellor?
Oh, well, I have with certain people where it's easy to identify where the issue's coming from. But generally speaking, probably not. No.
But does that then come back to that stigma that's attached to like hearing?
Well, it's almost like you're making a diagnosis and sort of saying, I think you're a bit cuckoo and therefore need some help.
But that's the thing, straight away, isn't it?
There are some people I think need some help.
But isn't that a judgment call? Isn't that you saying, if you've got challenges, whatever they are, that you're cuckoo for using your language? But that's that stigma, isn't it? It's like
inappropriate.
Inappropriate, but it's truthful. There's a level of truth there. That's how people see it. It's like you're thick because you're, like you said before, like being deaf, or you're blind because you've got a pair of glasses, or it means you're not as bright as, say, somebody who doesn't wear glasses. All of that stigma that's out there.
There are times when I can be more precise about it, where people, I have problem. Try again. Where I think there's a problem with someone's financial situation. As an example, if they're giving money to somebody, and that I always worry when I hear they start telling me that, oh, I've met someone. There's someone on the internet, and I'm hooking up with them online, and I try and quietly persuade them that this may not be the best thing to be doing. But if I think that it's got worse than that, then I would contact authorities about it. And that could usually it starts with the fraud department, who then get to grips with it. But
can you do that though? Are you allowed to do that? Is that part of your safeguarding kind of thing as an organisation or not?
It depends on the situation,
right,
but generally speaking, the organisations turn around and say, it's entirely up to someone how they spend their money. So if they choose to give it away to someone, that's their, But where I think I think there's something more serious going on. There are not organisations, but places you can go to and say, I've got real concerns about this, and they would make contact.
Part of your morals, really, as in, morally, you're worried about that person.
Yes.
And that's why you would do that.
Yes.
Well, we do, but I suppose that's the same, like for the charity and for me in practice and for the rehab and stuff, we have what's called safeguarding. So if there's a safeguarding concern, we'll always tell somebody if we're going to raise a safeguarding concern. And there's a really strict procedure to follow. And we do that as a charity, and we do that as the rehab, and I also do that in private practice.
Yeah, and also you have to be very careful about vulnerable people generally.
Definitely.
And I've had a lot of work on that over the last few years. It's become very, very important to make sure that anyone with any vulnerability isn't being I don't know, taken for a ride by somebody. And also make the whole organisation aware of it, so that if there's any contact from any central units, they're aware of those vulnerabilities, and they do actually look at those things now.
They red flag it.
Yes,
that's good.
So
and
important.
why?
Yeah. And I think that's really vitally important to prevent that. I mean, I know people that have actually sadly got caught in that situation, and also I'm aware of, just say, my own position. If I was on my own, if anything happened to Dave, or where I would be at. I'm reasonably comfortable, and I know that I would be an attractive catch to somebody in that situation. I'm aware of that. Do you know what I'm saying? But actually, when you're vulnerable, you're grieving, you're lonely, you're all of those. Actually, do you know what? You could be my best friend.
Oh yeah.
And and you can end up taking whatever, and it can feel like that for some people. And
yes.
So tough at that time. And that's when I think, a good counsellor, a good bit of support can be offered.
Yeah, and it's not just vulnerability from the point of view of maybe having just been bereaved or being disabled in any way or having some mental impairment. It's also obviously the more elderly people, but also young people.
Yeah.
People between the age of sort of 80 who can contract to do stuff at the age of 18.
Yeah.
But they haven't got the experience to realise if it's not right for them.
Well, that comes back to credit cards, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
They're signing a bit of paper to say that I can have a credit card.
Yes.
Actually, they've got no real way of paying it back. And actually, they don't understand that they're going to pay another 30% on top.
And before you know it, you owe someone £40,000.
Exactly.
I'll give you a really good example. So a group of my friends have all suggested that I get a Virgin Atlantic credit card. Because you collect points that you can use on Virgin holidays and Virgin flights. And I've applied a couple of times, and for some reason to get declined. Don't know why, but do. And a few, no idea why.
You're dodgy, obviously.
So I've got an American Express credit card that does exactly the same. You collect points, and there was a particular time where I paid the balance about a minute past midnight. And it tripped over in our system and said the payment was late.
Yeah.
And anyway, obviously it appeared on my credit report saying that the payment was late. And I then get a letter from Virgin saying, you've now been approved for a Virgin Atlantic credit card. And you think, wow, that's unbelievable.
Why is that? Why would that be, though? I don't understand.
Well, I think it improved his credit score.
Oh, because you're dodgy.
Right.
No, because you have to pay something.
Pay some interest.
Yeah, as in
rather than not clearing it all the time.
Saying that's what happened to Dave and I.
Yeah.
We got refused credit because
your credit rating's
because
too
our
good.
Credit rating's too good. You're right.
What's hilarious though is American Express contacted me and said, we noticed that you paid literally a couple of minutes past midnight. They've now removed the late payment on my credit report.
That was good.
Yeah, it was really good.
That's what you call customer service, isn't it?
It was really good, yeah. That's it. So it's now not there, but in that little
Did you take the other credit card up or not?
Of course I did. I want points for flights to eventually go on holiday. Why not?
Oh, it is. Life's tough, isn't it? If you don't know, it's tough if you get taken. And it just proves about taking advantage of people who are more vulnerable than people that that don't really use. I mean, I never owe anybody any money apart from through business, and that's normal. And I have a mortgage on my house.
Yeah. Now the crazy thing is, you see, I used to have a Nectar card.
Yeah.
And I do frequently fill up at Sainsbury's, but I don't carry the Nectar card around.
I don't know.
And yet I could be building up this credit, these points, and I can go spending them. And I think a lot of people miss out that.
Oh yeah, you do.
You do,
definitely. I forget to have mine. Yeah. I forget my Nectar card all the time. Dave has his on his phone.
I have one client, and she's amazing because she spends everything on her credit card, racks up points, and she has sort of £200 or £300 a year to spend via these points she gets on her credit card.
Dave and I do too.
She's religious with it.
Dave does too.
And that's what I've become. I've become one of those people.
Yeah.
But you have to pay it.
Lazy, I think.
You have to pay it every time. As soon as it comes in, you have to pay all of it. Not just the little bit they go, you only need to pay £3.50 when you owe £35,000 because otherwise you get racked for the 30% interest on top of it. And people don't realise that that's what it is. Anyway, we talked enough about finance. I'm just aware of time, and you've been chatting for 3/4 of an hour, and we've more than that.
Absolutely fine. Yes, I think so.
Thank you. So, what's it been like?
What?
Being on the podcast.
Doing this.
Very simple, very straightforward,
relaxed,
easy to talk, but I can talk anyway.
Well, we'd love to have you back.
That's kind of my job in a funny sort of way. Well, actually, it's not. My job is to listen, not to talk. Listen more and not talk as much.
So,
fair enough.
Do you want to pose the final question that we always ask people?
We always ask. So, if you'd watched the previous podcast,
which you haven't,
which you admitted you haven't, not yet. Okay, so on the way home, you can listen to it in the car.
I think I sent you a link as well.
You did, yeah.
I did.
That's really bad. So we ask everybody the same question, which is, what's your goal for the next 12 months? Because what we want to do is get you back in 12 months' time to review your goal for the year.
My goal for the next 12 months.
Yeah, and it could be anything. It can be about getting fit. It could be something for the local community. It could be whatever you want.
Oh, heavens.
Yeah. We put you on the spot because we think that's the best way to do it.
My goal for the next 12 months, which I have, the goal should be something you have a control over, would be to go to Australia and see my 2 new grandsons. I say new, one's 4, I think, but because of COVID, couldn't go. And I promised myself that when COVID was over, which is now, I would go.
I see. Okay.
Funnily enough, you should say that, because this is really odd. I can't remember who I was talking to, whether it was Victoria or whether it was Dave. One of us was talking about it. And I said, I wonder if Wills has planned to go out to see his grandkids, because obviously COVID's got in the way for a lot of people to travel. And I wondered that. And that was a conversation I had with one of them about you. And that is really odd.
Well,
that'd be nice.
It's certainly flagged up.
Yeah.
It's whether I can escape.
Can.
On my busy life, and it's not just work, but busy life all around.
Yeah.
Of course.
Making time, isn't it?
You've got to make time.
I think you're right. That's one of the things we should all make, is more time.
Yes,
for sure.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, thank you for coming.
Thanks.
Really appreciate it. It's been lovely.
Fun.
Yeah.
We'll see you in a year's time.
Okay.
Yeah.